Here's a hot take for you. There's no career ladder in music, but it looks like there is, right? When I was starting out, I looked at the big orchestras and the way they hired their subs and their extras, and I wished I was getting that kind of work. I looked at the prestige concerts happening in town, the video game concerts and the arena concerts and the touring artists that put together orchestras, and I wanted to be doing that. I sat in my various second oboe substitute roles and I wished I was playing principal or at least playing English horn, getting solos. Everybody seemed to be ahead of me and getting called before me and working before me. It takes a really long time to break into the freelance scene and to become one of the people that gets called first, or at least gets called early. It takes a lot of networking. It takes a lot of showing up and doing a good job and gradually getting noticed and gradually becoming top of mind for people. It takes a lot of being visible and being good to be one of those people that gets called for those arena concerts. It takes a long time to be working steadily enough that you can consider yourself a full-time musician if you don't have that full-time job. When you are starting out, like maybe you have a gig every month, maybe you have a gig every couple of months. It takes a long time to get to the point where you're like a little bit burned out on gigs. It takes a long time to get to the place where you can support yourself exclusively with music. And while I was working through all of this, I assumed that once I got to the top, if I ever got to the top, things would be different. Things would be better. I would have arrived. I would understand myself as a person who had arrived. But like the thing is this, that once you have arrived at that magical place where you can turn work down, where the work you get can basically fund your lifestyle, where you do get to play those touring shows that come through, or you do sit in the big groups with some regularity, you begin to realize that there's nowhere else to go. There's not a natural step from there to management. There's not a natural step from there to soloing or to higher paid groups. There's not more responsibility that gets offered to you. There's not a raise unless you create it for yourself. Now, it goes without saying, of course, that the career ladder for those auditioning for the big jobs and playing in those big jobs is similar. You can look up to the people in those jobs. If you have a full-time orchestra job, then you look up to the people in the big five orchestras. And if you have one of those jobs, I don't know where you look, overseas maybe, but um and our admiration for the people in those amazing jobs is justifiable. They're wonderful. But I think that they would agree that once you get there and you have one of those jobs, that's the end of the line too. It can be a great end. It can be a tremendous position. But what are you going to do with all of the creativity and ambition and work ethic and energy that brought you this far? Because once you're in the job, you're just doing the job. If you want to get more interesting projects, if you want to work on repertoire that you really love, you might need to create those opportunities for yourself. If you want to make more money and you're already playing the better gigs and you're already playing steadily, then continuing to work on your musicianship in your practice room isn't going to get you there. You might need to start or optimize another income stream. And like you've heard this from me before, right? I talk about it in my book, The Happiest Musician. I talk about it on this podcast, the frustration that comes with being a mid-career musician who is excellent at what you do, who is doing the work. The trap is this, that music keeps you busy. It's the time that you spend at the gig, especially it's December now, so this gig heavy season. And it's the time that you spend preparing for the gig and commuting to it. And it's the time you spend on your instrument drilling fundamentals for yourself. And it's the time that you spend networking and trying to keep yourself visible so that you get hired for those better gigs. If you never pause to reflect, which for years I never did, you'll never notice that you actually have become that person that you used to look up to. And You will never decide that your approach needs to change to get you to what you really want. You might not even notice that your wants have changed. And going from desiring to do the work in the town, maybe now what you would like is to work less, to work differently, to have a greater impact on your students or on the people around you. So, as I was working heavily, as I self identified primarily as a performer and as a freelancer, and as I was trying to build this position for myself, every year at the end of December, I would just collapse into a puddle of exhaustion and, wait to crawl back out of it when the gigs started showing up again in mid-January. I would start a new year, same as the old year. Christmas is my least favorite holiday of the year. But New Year's is my actual favorite. I love the reset that is possible for us when we pause, when we take a look at what happened over the last year, and when we set some intentions for the year ahead so that we have the chance to do something different or to do something better. I have grown to love this planning period time, this time when I can actually think about how I want the new year to be different than the old year. During this busiest season of December, there's no real time to pause and reflect, but I want to invite for you that the quiet period after all of the holiday schlock, after all of the busy, is a time where you have the opportunity to take a look, to look back at the year that has just passed, to think about what you might like to be different in the new year, to dream bigger, to imagine what that career ladder that you create for yourself might look like in the new year. I have a link in the show notes. I would love to offer this as a community opportunity at the end of this year. Let's go into a Zoom room. Let's do some planning together. Let's do some dreaming. And whether that idea, that's the time that I have proposed, and whether the idea that I have proposed here is useful to you or not, look, we're at the end of the year. What does your new career ladder look like? This has been a Happiest Musician Minisode of the Crushing Classical podcast. I hope that this has felt helpful to you, has felt interesting to you, has sparked something for you. If this feels useful, of course, please share this podcast, share this episode with a friend, take a screenshot, share it on social media. Reach out to me with the link in the show notes, and let me know how this struck you, how you feel about it. If you would like to join me for that planning session at the end of the year, I have a link in the show notes for that as well. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.